What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Alphonso Speaks and welcome to a brand new trial. It's time for some Brice Rhodes. I know you guys been asking for this one. I promised you that it was coming through, and here it is. We are going to go through both opening statements today. Both are about 22 minutes long, so we're going to go through the state's opening statement and the defense's opening statement. But before we get there, you guys already know what time it is. Our sponsor, Kenichi Bear Headphones. Guys, if you want the same quality without the price of JBL, Beats, Sony, all of those expensive brands, look no further than Kenichi Bear Headphones. The Hibernation 5C model is now available. You can use promo code Alphonso, all caps, and I do identify by that name, and I do know that individual. So make sure you guys grab some ahead of the holidays. Use that promo code to save yourself 15% off of your purchase. Adjustable headphones. Great microphone. You can use it for gaming, music, talking on the phone, everything. Surround sound. It sounds so good. I use it for everything, guys. I use it for gaming. I use it for listening to music on the airplane. I use it to maybe make it look like I'm listening to something so nobody talks to me. If you guys are that kind of person as well, these are perfect for you. And they're stylish. Black and silver, can't go wrong. All right. So let's go ahead and get into the opening statement from the state. This is the Brice Rhodes trial. Let's see what ends up happening here. Kentucky versus Brice Rhodes. What we got?
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
By the way, this trial took 7 years. 7 years to get started. That is crazy. I don't understand how the justice system works. I think there were some delays with Brice Rhodes. You know, he kept getting rid of his attorneys and stuff. I don't know. You guys let me know in the comment section what I need to look up and react to. This case is still a little bit new to me. I'm not as familiar with it as I am with the Waukesha case. So anything I'm missing, please let me know.
Callous and Casual was the first murder. The two that followed were Calculating and Cruel. In May of 2016, Brice Rhodes snuffed out the life of Christopher Jones, Larry Ordway, and Maurice Gordon.
So 3 people he killed. I believe one of them was, I don't know if they said it was random or targeted, but one of them was, just a separate person, and the other 2 were the 2 juveniles that were in the vehicle with Brice Rhodes at the time of that first murder.
The evidence is going to show that these acts occurred basically as 2 acts. And so if this were a play, these would be the characters that are involved in the first act. We have Maurice Gordon and Larry Ordway. Despite having different last names, these 2 are brothers that live together. They went to school at Olmsted. They liked playing basketball. They enjoyed rapping. They were always hanging out together. They had a home. They had a family. But from time to time, they would be out of the house for a few days. That wouldn't be anything unusual for them. They were born 2 years apart and a day, so they almost had the same birthday. And unfortunately,
Very interesting. They almost had the same birthday. Never really see stuff like that too often. It's a pretty interesting fact.
Fortunately, they both died on the same day, which we'll get to a little bit later. So these two brothers that were always hanging out together, 16 years old and 14-year-old, were friends with several people, one of which was Ja'Cory Taylor. Now, Ja'Cory, you're going to hear testimony from him. He's going to testify. He had a rough go of it. He had lost his job at White Castles. He was in and out of people's houses. He would stay in the stairwell at his girlfriend's house. He was just kind of on the boundary of things. And he was friends with both Larry and Maurice. And Ja'Cory goes by Corey also sometimes, and Maurice Gordon also goes by Reese. They were mutual friends with Brice Rhodes, the defendant here, who went by Rambo.
This man went by the name Rambo? Bro, that's already trouble. That's already trouble. That's crazy. That's a crazy nickname to have.
Rambo, Brice Rhodes, was 25 years old at the time in 2016 when he's hanging out with 14-year-olds and 16-year-olds. Jacory was 17 years old.
Bro, that's mad weird. You ain't got no friends your age? You're hanging out with 14 and 16-year-olds? Like, I don't understand if, like, maybe they're cousins or something. But he hasn't mentioned anything like that. He's just saying, like, they were just hanging out together. So, like, see, that's weird energy to me, man. Like, it really is. Like, if you have nobody that you're hanging out with that's your friend, that's your age, and you're just hanging out with juveniles all the time, like, that's already a bad sign that, like, you're not accomplishing much in life. Because when you start accomplishing something in life, something of substance, you will end up hanging out with your peers because you guys are on the same, you know, wavelength or whatever you want to call it. It's just weird.
And there's one more person in this friend group. Antoine Carter, right here, and he goes by Buddha, and he was just a friend of theirs that would hang out. So, as they were hanging out, an idea came about. This is a picture of Larry and Maurice, Mr. Rhodes, the defendant. It's a picture of Antoine and a picture of Jacory. Now I'm gonna leave this up here just as a reference for you all, so when the names start going, you can look back. So, one night with Brice Rhodes, it came up.
Okay, give me a second, guys. Just trying to remember all the names here. Okay, so the first victim, Maurice Gordon. Second, Larry Ordway. Guessing Larry was a 16-year-old. He looks older. You had Brice Rhodes, and then you had Jacory Taylor, who in that picture it looks like he's actually like in an interrogation room. So that'll be interesting. This case is like not very. I'm not very familiar at all.
Upon an idea. And the idea was basically it was a hit out on somebody, and they were going to kill that person and collect on the hit. And Brice Rhodes was aware of this hit and knew who would pay on it and knew who the target was. So, on May the 4th, 2016, now keep in mind, all the events from this case happened in May of 2016. So, when you see witnesses on the witness stand, they don't look at all the same as they looked back then. And also people's memories are a little bit different because this happened a while ago. So, the idea was this. They all hopped in a car on May the 4th, and Maurice was driving the car. It was a blue Mazda that was owned by the defendant, Mr. Rhodes. The front passenger seat was Larry. Brice Rhodes was in the back behind the driver's seat. And Jacory Taylor was on the right behind the passenger seat. Trailing in a different vehicle was Jacory Taylor, Antoine Carter. He's in a truck that's following behind this car. So it's nighttime, and they're driving around looking for this guy, looking to collect the price on his head. As they approach, picture of Antoine, who was the follow driver. He was 17 at the time. As they approach 41st Street, there's video of the car driving by, then video of the truck. What happened was a man was walking out in the street, and he had long braids. And so he looked like the guy that Brice Rhodes believed the hit was on. So Brice Rhodes rolled down his window. The guy was walking out of the street. Cars are parked in the road. He's walking out into this, away from the street, in between the cars. And Brice Rhodes yells out the window to him, "Hey, get out the road, bitch," and then shoots him one time in the side. And the bullet wound is going to go through his arm and into his side. Police are going to be alerted that there was a shooting and respond to the scene.
So if you guys saw, he's just laying right there. The guy who got shot, he's just laying on the ground right there.
The man on the pavement there is Christopher Jones. He had nothing to do with any hit or street business. He was just in the wrong place in the wrong time and ended up being shot. He was still alive but non-responsive there at the scene. EMS took him to the hospital where he passed away.
See, that's the thing about gang culture that just, like, I don't understand. I don't know if Brice Rhodes was in, any type of gang or anything. I mean, there might be evidence that comes out during the course of the trial, but, like, that's so crazy how you can just literally be in the wrong place at the wrong time and just lose your life for literally no reason. And, like, there's really no rules, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, it's unfortunate. Rest in peace to that guy. Just walking by himself, maybe getting some fresh air. Who knows what he was doing? You know what I mean? Like, but I'm assuming, he was in his own neighborhood or somewhere that he would, he had authorization to be. And, you just got a Brice Rhodes running out there doing whatever it is that he was doing. And, I don't, of course, I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but, like, I can't, just because they were victims too doesn't mean we can, like, really ignore the involvement of the two juveniles that were involved in this as well. Like, they obviously knew what was going to happen. They knew somebody was going to die. They willingly, participated, in this act. It's just an unfortunate situation all around.
This is the intersection of the nearest street the police reported to. There's another picture of Mr. Jones. And this is a picture from the body cam of approximately where his body was in the road as the car drove by. You can see this is the clothes he was wearing, and some of the items that were on his person. And that's what he was reduced to after he was shot by Mr. Rhodes. You can see a single bullet wound in his arm, and then the entrance of the bullet wound that turned out to be fatal into his chest. So that's the end of what, if this were a play, if this wasn't so serious, we'd call the first act. Now, a couple different ways it happened, but essentially, Brice Rhodes became aware by overhearing a phone conversation with Jacory talking to Maurice that they were talking about the murder that had happened, that their family knew about it. And as soon as Mr. Rhodes knew that the boys were talking, even just to their family, he knew that they had to do something about these boys to keep them from talking, to cover up this first murder. So this is a black Dodge Charger that Mr. Rhodes had access to and often drove. And you're going to hear testimony that on the 22nd of May, just a couple of weeks later, this black Charger picked the boys, Larry and Maurice, up at their house. And that was the last time that anybody from that apartment was going to see them alive again. So Maurice and Larry are obviously going to be the victims in this second act. And it's going to be carried out by a defendant named Tyrion Coleman, by Antoine Carter, who was involved earlier, and by Corey Taylor, and by Mr. Rhodes himself. So I'm going to leave that up there for your reference. So this is Brice Rhodes' apartment that he lived at with his mom.
No offense to any of y'all that are living with your parents, making ends meet, maybe starting a career, maybe taking care of your parents. Y'all are not the same as this dude living with his parents. Y'all know where I'm gonna go with that. I'm just let it ride.
I had the boys over there. It was four of them, well, the six of them, four individuals listed there, Maurice, Larry, and another individual. And as the night got on, boys started wrestling around, and there was a little bit of a skirmish that broke out with Maurice. And so Brice Rhodes said it was time to discipline Maurice. Maurice had pulled out a knife on somebody, and so Brice hit him upside the head pretty hard and took the knife. He then said, "It's time for you to be disciplined." So he went up to Maurice, he put a toboggan on his head, pulled it down over his eyes so he couldn't see. And he tied his arms behind his back so that he couldn't move. And he made him beg for forgiveness and plead for his life, which he did. He was begging everyone in that room to spare him and apologizing and saying he was sorry. So Larry, his brother, was taken and held in a different room. And from Larry's room, he could hear his brother pleading for his life, and he could hear what happened to his brother. And what happened to his brother is that he was punched a few times by Mr. Taylor. And then Brice Rhodes took a knife and began stabbing him over and over and over again in the chest, in the midsection, and in the genitals. He was screaming and crying out for help, and his brother was helpless a room away to do anything about it. When they were finally done, they rolled Maurice over, and then they brought Larry into the room. And then they repeated the process. They took the toboggan off, they put it on Larry's head. They put something over Larry, and they started stabbing him until he died there in that apartment. Brice's mom and sister, who shared that apartment with him, were out of town that weekend. So he had the place to himself. He had the people involved help him take the body of the boys and put them in some totes, which he then carried down and put in the back of his Mazda. Some in the back seat, and one of them in the back seat, and one of them in the trunk. And then he drove off. Now he left Antoine and Jacory at the house to clean up, because there was blood all over the carpet. He gave them cleaning supplies, and he gave them towel. And just for good measure, because his mom was out of town, he had them also do his dishes while they were scrubbing up the blood. He and other individuals went and dropped the body of the boys off, dropped their bodies off. He also set fire to the items that were associated with the stabbing and left it in a dumpster. Dropped the bodies off around 4028 River Park Drive, which you can see from the area is near the park, near Wyandotte Park, where they played ball. So on the 22nd day of May, this is what somebody in the neighborhood discovered. 2 boys, mutilated, stabbed, set on fire, and left like trash. So boys' parents are starting to wonder where they're at when they don't come home after the first day. And so mom gives them a call. Well, the person that answers the phone isn't Maurice. It's Antoine Carter. And he tells her, kids are fine. They're doing something else. I just borrowed the phone. So police discover the 2 bodies. And eventually they have sketch artists come out. They can't get fingerprints because the bodies are too badly bent. They have sketch artists come out and draw a picture of how the boys looked, and they're looking for, checking news stories for missing boys. Eventually, they find that there's 2 boys that are missing from Olmsted School, and they have the boy's mother come out, and she identifies that, yes, that's them. From there, police realize a couple things. They know.
I cannot imagine coming out, identifying your sons, and they're in that state. Like, how do you sleep after that experience, man? Like, that has to haunt you, like, forever.
Who the boys left with that night. They know that it was Mr. Rhodes. They also know that they left with Antoine Carter and Jacory Taylor. So police track the phone.
I'm guessing the reason Jacory Taylor and Antoine Carter aren't on trial is because they probably took plea deals of some sort. That's what my guess is going to be. I think I did see a thumbnail or something of one of them like testifying in court. So I'm guessing they both took some type of plea deal.
And eventually it leads them to Antoine Carter. And Antoine Carter eventually ends up talking to police and explaining what happened after some little bit of give and take. He finally got to the story of what happened. About this same time, police pick up Brice Rhodes, and he gives a short statement, which you will hear. Police go out to Brice Rhodes' house once they've heard what happened, and they start pulling up the carpet from his house. And when they do a DNA analysis on that carpet, of course, they find the blood of the two brothers is there on the carpet. Police also learn that after this event, after that night, when Brice Rhodes comes back from dropping the bodies off, he picks up the two boys that were left to clean up the house. Corey had with him the boots that he wore in the house. And he left those boots at a girlfriend's house. And so police got a search warrant. They go to that girlfriend's house, and those boots, the DNA on those boots, comes back to the boys as well, corroborating what was said earlier. He also gives a statement to police, and it pretty much matches the statement of Antoine Carter that I've just relayed to you. So, here's a picture of the apartment, how cleanly the flooring was stripped from Brice Rhodes' place. Another thing that police did once the investigation got underway was they went and looked at Brice Rhodes' blue Mazda that had transported the two victims in the tote sacks. And you'll notice this is a picture of the back seat of the Mazda. All the cloth seating has been ripped out of it. And then this is a picture of Jacory at the police station giving his statement. You can see, I want you to remember how young he truly is. At this point in time, he is 5'5", weighs 122 pounds. Brice Rhodes is a 25-year-old grown man. There's a picture of the boots that were recovered from the girlfriend's house. You're going to hear from a lot of different people that are going to come through here. The police that were involved with both of these investigations that had to piece together that the two investigations were connected and take over. So there's going to be two different lead officers. You're going to hear from experts in, you're going to hear from the medical examiner. You're going to hear from CSU professionals. You're going to hear everything that the police did to make sure that the three victims in this case get justice. And I hope at the conclusion of the Commonwealth's case, you will give them that justice. Thank you.
Okay, so really heavy stuff there. We're going to go to the defense's opening statement. It's about 25 minutes long. That was really heavy, though. I can see why, a lot of attention is being given to this trial. Like, I don't know, that's heavy. Again, like I said, it's like, they're juveniles, you know what I mean? And they're being influenced by, obviously, this 25-year-old man. And, I don't know. This is why, like, I don't really know what to necessarily blame, but I will say this is why good parenting is so important. This is why, like, being active in, your children's lives is so important, because there's no reason at 14 and 16 that they should be out for, like, the state says that, you know, them being out for 4 days at a time was normal. Like, I don't know about y'all, but like in my upbringing, that's not normal at all. You know what I mean? If I'm gone for more than 2 hours, I'm getting a phone call. You know what I mean? Like, not 4 days. That's kind of crazy. I just wonder what kind of, like, was it a single mother situation, or maybe a grandmother raising the kids type of situation, or just any type of single parent at all. Maybe they worked a lot of jobs, didn't have time to keep up with the two teenagers, and they just fell into the wrong crowd. I don't know. I'm hoping as this trial goes along, we get more information on that. So let's go to the defense.
I stabbed him. I stabbed Maurice in his side. I drove on him. I ran him over. Ladies and gentlemen, these are quotes from someone involved in this case, but these are not quotes from Brice Rhodes. These statements were made by Ann Carter. Ann Carter talking about killing his best friend, Maurice Gordon, and running over a helpless Christopher Jones. Ann Carter is the prosecution's main witness in this trial. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'm so glad that you're here. I'm thankful that you're here. I know Brice is also grateful that you are here, because he has waited a long time for you all to hear the evidence. The evidence, or the lack thereof, will show you that Brice Rhodes is not guilty of these accusations. The burden of proof being beyond a reasonable doubt. Why do we keep talking about that? I know you've heard that many times already. Our system, our government, makes it so difficult to take someone's freedom that we can't let the government make any mistakes. And we want to be sure that no one is ever wrongfully convicted, especially in a situation where the stakes are this high. The government has made some very serious accusations against Brice. And I'm not here to undermine the loss that the families and the community have suffered as a result of these senseless deaths. But I'm here to make sure that nobody is wrongfully convicted, and that's why you are here.
I do think it's important to make this note real quick. I know a lot of people, they really don't like defense lawyers, but there's a reason defense lawyers have to exist, and that is because defense lawyers are there to make sure that nobody is convicted of things that they did not in fact do. Every detail in every case is just so important. Every detail can be, the difference between 10 years to life in prison. You know what I mean? Like, it's super important for defense lawyers to exist. Now, do I think Brice Rhodes, do I think the evidence will show that Brice Rhodes is innocent in anything in this case? Absolutely not. I don't believe that, but this is why we go to court. This is why we have defense, because a lot of times there are people who are in danger of being wrongfully convicted because you do have the wrong guy or the wrong woman. And defense lawyers are there to make sure that that doesn't happen. So as you guys go along and watch this trial, and watch any trial really, ensure that you watch with an open mind towards the defense lawyers, because they're there for a reason. They're there for a reason. Their job is super important. Who knows? One day you might need them. Let's just hope you don't have defense lawyers like Dylann Roof had, because they were the most disrespectful defense lawyers I've ever seen in my life. And I really hope all of them lose their license to practice law, because their behavior in that court was absolutely unacceptable. Especially with the gravity of that case, with all the lives lost in that case. Absolutely unacceptable. And not Dylann Roof. I'm sorry. Nicholas Cruz is the one I meant to say. Nicholas Cruz. Just absolutely unacceptable. But that reminds me, a couple cases I might want to end up covering, Dylann Roof and Nicholas Cruz. But back to this.
As jurors in this case, you guys have a great responsibility. But with that responsibility also comes a great power.
I'm sorry, guys. I live right next to a main street, so anytime there's any type of siren going on, yes, you guys will hear it. I apologize. There's nothing I can really do about it, though. But back to the defense's statement.
You all have the power to hold the government to their burden of proving Brice Rhodes guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. You have the power to say no. You have the power to say we are not convinced. And the power to know that that decision is okay. So how do you make that decision? As Ms. Jones-Brown told you earlier, none of us can define reasonable doubt for you. That's up to you as a juror. That's up to you as an individual. So what are you going to use to make this determination? You will hear evidence over the next several days. You will decide what evidence you find credible, what witnesses you find believable. So what evidence do you all expect to see to help you make this decision? It's a very important decision. Eyewitnesses? That might be good. I think you'll find that there aren't any eyewitnesses who were not themselves involved in these crimes. There are no neutral witnesses. Do these witnesses have a motive to lie? Can we trust them? You might expect to see a murder weapon. There's not one. Is there physical evidence? Yes. Can it be trusted? That's up to you all to decide. Let's talk about the physical evidence.
I gotta give it to her. She's pretty good. She's pretty good.
The Louisville Metro Police Department found tire tracks and footprints at the scene where Larry and Maurice's bodies were found. The tire tracks could not be linked to Brice's vehicle. The footprints did not match Brice's shoes. Brice's fingerprints were not on any evidence. Brice Rhodes' DNA was not found on any evidence except for on the steering wheel and the gear shift of his own vehicle. Let's talk about Brice's car. The Commonwealth showed you a picture of the Mazda. Louisville Metro Police Department searches Brice's car and claims that the entire back seat of Brice's light blue Mazda had been removed in an effort to conceal evidence of these crimes. No DNA linking Brice to those crimes was recovered in that car. You'll hear that Brice borrowed Chris Jensen's black Charger to drive these boys around. And when you hear from Mr. Jensen, note that he is not going to be able to say that anyone was with Brice when he picked up that black Charger, nor was anyone with Brice when he dropped off that black Charger to Mr. Jensen. These are things to consider. I want to give you an alternate perspective, if you will, than what the government has. Have they accused the right person, or was Brice an easy target to blame? Has the one who already committed these crimes pled guilty? I ask you all to listen to the evidence, observe the witnesses, and ask yourselves if something isn't quite right here. The evidence will show that there is a reasonable doubt that Brice Rhodes is guilty. Let's talk about the detectives in this case. As you all know, the Louisville Metro Police Department was the agency responsible for investigating both of these murders, both scenes, or excuse me, both incidents on May 4th and then again on May 22nd. And there were two lead detectives, as the Commonwealth told you, Detective Griffin and Detective Tonelli, and you'll hear from both of them. But I want you to think about how many hands were involved in this case. When it comes to handling evidence, interviewing witnesses, executing search warrants, mistakes were made. And I want you to think, can we rely on every person that works for the Louisville Metro Police Department?
Bro, she is like really dissecting every little piece. Like, this is why you have defense attorneys. This is actually kind of crazy. Like, she's like, I feel like in the Darrell Brooks trial, you know, you mainly had a couple of detectives and then other personnel, you know, within the police department, like the medical examiners and the forensic examiners and stuff. But, you know, mostly like Detective Carpenter and Detective Stern for the most part. So, like, the amount of hands touching everything, just, you know, it wasn't really as much. And then on top of that, when you look at the Darrell Brooks case, he got caught in 4K video everywhere he went. Like, ring cameras, cell phone cameras, street cameras. He got caught and seen everywhere. That, like, I'm telling you, there is nothing an attorney would have been able to do for that man. I know some of you have felt like, well, an attorney could have got it reduced. No, he's gonna die in prison regardless of what that sentence was going to be. I don't care if that thing ended up concurrent with a chance for you know, early release. He wasn't gonna get that early release, for one, and two, he probably wouldn't even make it to the early release, because as soon as he gets in general population, it's over for him. But this one's different. This one's different because she's making a good point. None of the murders were caught on camera. All you have is the aftermath. You have Christopher Jones lying in the street, and you have the two teenagers burned and thrown in the dumpster. But that's really all you have. And then she's saying, like, all these places that, you know, evidence from Brice Rhodes wasn't found at. I'm interested to see what the state is going to do to counter this, because so far she's doing a really good job.
You will learn that the Louisville Metro Police Department investigated these homicides, and once again, this is the same force that murdered Breonna Taylor. Yes.
Okay. I wonder what that's all about. I'm gonna mute that so you guys don't have to hear that loud sound. That's kind of obnoxious. But I wonder if there's a problem that they have with the way that she's presenting her opening arguments. You know, we're gonna skip ahead, obviously. All right, let's see what she has to say.
To the case of Breonna Taylor, I'm going to admonish you to, gentlemen, at this point in the case, there has not been any evidence presented that links any information in this case to the case of Breonna Taylor. I'm going to admonish you to disregard counsel's last statement at this point. Okay,
so the defense just made their first mistake. Looks like they shouldn't have, you know, brought up Breonna's. But here's the thing: I love in court cases where they're like, "Oh, please disregard that last statement." Bro, I already heard it. There is no disregarding it anymore. And defense attorneys know that. That's why they'll say certain things knowing it'll get objected to and, like, probably, oh, please disregard. But it's already out there. You can't just take it out of somebody's memory now. It's already been said. I think she knew that coming in. So maybe that wasn't a mistake. Maybe she already knew what was going to happen, because she seemed very ready to approach the stand. Like, as soon as she said Breonna Taylor's name, she already was like, it looked like she was already ready to turn around and go up there because she knew what was going to happen. Very interesting.
Ladies and gentlemen, even if you find Detective Tonelli and Detective Griffin, the two lead detectives in this case, as I mentioned, there were so many hands in this case. Can you rely on everyone else that works for Louisville Metro Police Department? Detective Tonelli lied under oath about one of the biggest pieces of physical evidence that the police possessed. He told the court under oath not once, but twice, that law enforcement had a piece of evidence that they did not have and do not have. So you might be asking yourself,
But wait, what's that piece of evidence though?
I can see how some evidence could be lost. Maybe it was a tiny piece of hair. Maybe it was a speck of DNA. That seems reasonable. Ladies and gentlemen, no, it was an entire back seat of a car. It's gone.
How? What? Yo, this trial is clearly going to be very interesting because I'm very confused about how all of this stuff was happening. This is going to be interesting.
You know how I told you earlier that police stated that Brice's back seat had been removed. Detective Tonelli told a judge and then a grand jury that the Louisville Metro Police Department had found and collected a burnt back seat from a dumpster that matched Brice Rhodes' back seat. And now it's gone. I am mystified as to how you lose a piece of evidence that big. It's huge. It's a huge piece of evidence, not only physically, but to the case as well. So in an effort to get Brice charged, the court was misled, the grand jury was misled about a piece of evidence in the LMPD's possession. Did they lie under oath about having it? Or did they dispose of it because it didn't help their case? You all decide that. The Louisville Metro Police Department searched the home of Brice's mother, where he was residing on Hyde Avenue in Louisville, 2 times. The first search, officers found nothing incriminating. They even commented on how clean the apartment was. The crime scene unit was there, detectives were there, officers were there. It was a big search. Nothing was found.
That's kind of conflicting to what the state just said, though, right? Are they talking about the same apartment, right? The state just said that they took the carpet as evidence and the DNA matched the boys. So
And then they decide to just go back. The officers go back, decide to search the home again, and now claim that they have found evidence that Larry and Maurice were killed there. Now there's suddenly blood there. First of all, is that how search warrants work? You keep going back until you find something, and if you don't find anything, you find a way to come back and find something.
I'm sorry, guys, but see, the only problem with this argument that she's making right now is that if I'm on the jury, I don't care how many times it took you as a police officer to go back and find evidence. What I care about is you claim you found evidence. Is the forensic examiner going to come up here on the stand and confirm that the evidence that you found matched the DNA of the 2 bodies that you found? Because that's what I care about. I don't care about how many search warrants it took. Like that's a weak argument in my opinion. I don't care about that. I care about, does it match? Is it accurate to what the state is claiming that it's accurate to?
First you don't succeed, try again, huh? But that's not how search warrants work, ladies and gentlemen.
Again, I don't care.
Despite all of those officers being there, I've never seen a video recording of the search at Hyde Avenue. There's nothing for you all to watch to see what actually happened. I want you to consider that when you hear about how the evidence was collected. Consider that reasonable doubt as to the guilt of Mr. Rhodes. I want to talk to you all about the investigation in this case, or the lack thereof. I think it's fair to say that you all could conclude that the police had tunnel vision in this case. And when I say tunnel vision, I mean that they focused in on Brice Rhodes, excluding all other possible suspects. Elizabeth Wren, the mother of Larry and Maurice, was the first to point the finger at Brice Rhodes. But why? She didn't see anything. So what was her problem with Brice? Was it their romantic relationship had gone bad? I feel for her.
Whoa, hold up. Okay, so Brice was smashing the mom of the two boys. And that's why he was hanging out with the two boys. Okay. I mean, it's still weird, but it makes it a little bit less weird because, okay, that's how he knew them. He wasn't just, like, maybe hanging around a school or something like that. I don't know, guys. I don't know. Just bear with me, okay? There's a lot to take in all at once.
She lost both of her sons. She's a grieving mother, and you will see that when she testifies. But I'm going to ask you to look past that and think about the part that she played in this.
Treading on thin ice there. Better be good what comes out of your mouth next.
Consider the reliability of her statement. Evidence will show that she is a known drug user who was aware that her juvenile sons were hanging with Ja'Cory Taylor and Anwan Carter, were involved with guns, and even knew her son's friends bought a gun out of her own home.
There it is. Like I said, bad parenting, man, it leads to some really, really bad and dark things, man. And if that's true, if she really is all of that and they really got the gun from her and all that stuff, like that's it's not a good look.
She was naturally distraught when she spoke to the police, but also very likely under the influence. And I'm not saying that to speak ill of her, but as a jury, you have to know that the police took her statement and did not investigate anyone else. The police didn't care that she hated Brice. The police didn't care that they had a relationship that went sour.
But how would they not have investigated anybody else if somebody already took a plea deal? Like, isn't the state's lead witness in custody? So how would they have not what would he be in jail for if he didn't get investigated? That's weird to me.
The police didn't care that she hadn't actually seen anything. They already had a name, and she was happy to trash her ex-boyfriend. Ladies and gentlemen, no other suspects were investigated. Not a full investigation was done, as you might expect to see in a case of this magnitude. There were, however, other suspects to investigate. Just prior to the shooting of Christopher Jones, a Louisville Metro police officer reported a suspect in a white shirt, reported receiving a report of a suspect in a white shirt riding a bicycle and waving a gun around in the area. This is not a coincidence. It's a high crime area. It wasn't investigated. Another witness reported seeing a black Chrysler 300M near the scene of Christopher Jones's death, and even stated a person got out and messed with the body, but then fled before the police arrived. This was not investigated.
Bro, people are weird, man.
Another possible suspect comes to light in the statements of Anwan Carter and Ja'Cory Taylor. They both described two other men being present at and participating in the murder of brothers Larry and Maurice. Tyrone Coleman was eventually charged and convicted. However, the other individual was not charged or even questioned. There is a reasonable doubt that Brice Rhodes is guilty. There's no clear motive for Brice to have committed these crimes. The police allege that Brice Rhodes shot and killed Christopher Jones in the presence of Ja'Cory Taylor, Anwan Carter, Larry Ordway, and Maurice Gordon. And then about 3 weeks later, the police think that Brice stabbed Larry and Maurice because Brice was afraid they would go to the police and rat. But the other two who were present are still alive. Anwan Carter and Jacory Taylor were there, and they are still alive. Does this make sense to you?
Yes, kinda, because the way the state laid it out is that, first of all, the motive for the first murder was a hit, a cash hit, that they could cash in on. The second motive was that they had heard the brothers talking to their families about the murder. I feel like Anwan and Jacory maybe had played this game before. They knew not to mess up like that, and so, it wasn't really an issue. Maybe that's why they're still alive. I don't know. It's a little bit of a weak argument too, but I'm gonna let her continue.
And I would like to talk about those co-defendants. I stabbed him. I stabbed Maurice in his side. I drove on him. I ran him over. Anwan Carter was facing life in prison for his actions against 3 innocent people. He was facing life in prison.
Didn't she just say nobody else was investigated for these murders, though? I don't know. Let me know if I'm tripping, but this sounds like very contradictory.
And the prosecution said, that's okay. We'll give you probation. But to get the sweetheart offer, you got to give us someone else. Anwan Carter pled guilty to the murders of Christopher Jones, Maurice Gordon, Larry Ordway, and in exchange for that, the prosecution was okay with probation, or maybe a little prison, left it up to the judge, if you testify against Brice Rhodes. Anwan Carter gave a name, the police took it and ran with it. Up to that point, all they had was kids killing other kids. They wanted an adult to stick it to. And here we are.
But if you're gonna say that they wanted an adult to stick it to, you kind of have to explain why they wanted an adult to stick it to. You can't just say that without backing it up with something.
People have already admitted to killing Christopher Jones. Anwan Carter and Jacory Taylor. 3 people have already admitted to killing Larry Ordway and Maurice Gordon. Again, Anwan Carter and Jacory Taylor, plus Tyrone Coleman. They have all pled guilty to their murders. So why are we here then? Because in order for those men to get very lenient deals from the government, they agreed to testify against Brice. The evidence will show you all that those responsible for the murders have already been convicted and are now trying to put the blame on Brice Rhodes. There's reasonable doubt that Brice Rhodes is guilty. The evidence will show that the testimony of Anwan Carter and Jacory Taylor, who you will hear from, is not believable. Both of these men are known criminals. In fact, Anwan Carter is currently in prison right now in the state of Florida. Guess what for? Gun charges. He had a loaded weapon on him. So after he got his sweetheart deal here in Kentucky for killing 3 people, he went to the state of Florida, joined a gang, and again got arrested. He changed his statement at least 3 times to the police that I can think of. At first, Mr. Carter even told police, I do not know Brice Rhodes. I've never been in a car with him. However, after having time to consult with Jacory Taylor, a plan was concocted to point the finger at Brice Rhodes. These 2, Taylor and Carter, had a chance to get their stories together. There weren't any suspects initially after the Christopher Jones murder, but about 3 weeks later, Larry and Maurice are killed. Anwan Carter wasn't questioned until about 2 days after that incident. So all of this time, Carter and Taylor had time to get their stories straight. to come up with a plan of how to get themselves out of this. A plan to make themselves look less guilty for murdering their best friends, Larry and Maurice. A plan to blame Brice. Anwan Carter admitted to running over Christopher Jones's body in a pickup truck that he had stolen, that Mr. Carter had stolen. Do you know what kind of vehicle witnesses reported seeing at the scene where Larry and Maurice's bodies were recovered? A pickup truck, not Brice's blue Mazda. Anwan Carter admitted to stabbing his best friend Maurice Gordon. Carter claims to have seen Brice Rhodes shoot Christopher Jones, but the evidence will show that what Anwan Carter in fact saw was a hand out the window shooting a gun. If you recall, Mr. Carter was in the vehicle behind where the shots were fired, the vehicle that the shots were fired from. It was dark outside, and Carter could not see the face of the shooter. Jacory Taylor was in the back seat where the shots were fired and had just bought a gun from the boyfriend of Larry and Maurice's mother. Anwan Carter saw Jacory Taylor buy the gun. There's reasonable doubt that Brice Rhodes is guilty. Jacory Taylor admitted to buying that gun right before the shooting of Christopher Jones. He admitted to getting into an altercation with Maurice Gordon right before Maurice died. He admitted that Maurice Gordon pulled a knife on him. And then he admitted to stabbing Larry. Again, reasonable doubt. At the conclusion of the evidence, you will be asked to make a decision about Brice's fate. You have promised that in order to find anyone guilty, the government has first proven to you that that person is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. If the government has not done that, you all must find him not guilty. I stabbed him. I stabbed Maurice in his side. I drove on him. I ran him over. You all get to decide what is true, who you believe, and what is reliable. I ask you to use your power as jurors to tell the government you are not convinced. Tell them that the evidence is not sufficient, and tell them that we will not wrongfully convict Brice. Thank you.
Okay, so very interesting stuff here. See, my only thing is this. She makes such a great argument about everything she's talking about, but the problem is Brice has already shown his tail so many times in court that is going to be used against him in the minds of the jury. I don't care what court order is put out by the judge, they are going to pay attention to that. They're going to pay attention to the fact that he made threats against the court, all types of stuff. And they're going to say, it's believable that he's a violent individual. It's believable that he orchestrated all of this. Yeah, all those other three might have participated in the murder of the two brothers. But Brice seems like a hands-on kind of guy. You know what I mean? And yeah, it's very interesting. This trial is going to be very interesting to watch, and it's heavy stuff. So remember, guys, after you guys are done watching stuff like this, you need to go do something grounding, okay? Whether that's meditating, get into some water, whatever you do to like ground yourself, breathe, all that good stuff, because this is heavy stuff here. Like, these murders are brutal as I don't know what. Like, you have to ground yourself in these instances. I know I have to. And yeah, this is gonna be, whew, man, this is gonna be something. If you guys want more of the Brice Rhodes stuff, you guys know what to do. You gotta like the video, okay? Share, subscribe, follow me on my Instagram so you can give me more case recommendations, and I can interact with you guys better on there than I can on here. And peace, love, and positivity. Spread it everywhere you go. Like, share, subscribe. Thanks for watching this video. I will see you guys later. Stay safe, stay blessed. Peace.